in Canada. It has no impact on Canada's commitment to net neutrality.
Well, member for Lethbridge.
Wow, I thought the Prime Minister was going to mansplain net neutrality there for a moment, but it looks like he doesn't even understand the definition because he couldn't define it. Well, that was embarrassing. A whole lot of ums and ahs and a few stumbles, and yet isn't able to define Canadian content.
Led to the creation of many of the great content, like what the individual, the honourable member, is talking about.
This is the hardest hitting question period I have seen in a long time. Check it out. Watch the full thing. It's outstanding.
The Prime Minister says that he takes these threats seriously, but he's not giving serious answers. He should be able to say that scientists that are sponsored by the Chinese military and the Chinese government will not be allowed in these facilities. So will the Prime Minister ditch the script and ditch the woke talking points and answer yes or no? Will he bar scientists that are sent here from the Chinese government and the Chinese military from accessing sensitive Canadian research facilities?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, over the past number of years, we have taken significant steps to strengthen security around our sensitive institutions, particularly our universities and research facilities. We will continue to ensure that the work that is done there is protecting Canada's interests and Canadians in general. We will always ensure that we're working with our security agencies to keep Canadians safe, and we will not give in to pandering to anti-Asian racism. We've seen enough of a rise in intolerance across the country these past months. We need to continue to stand strong in supporting
the
diversity.
Necessary distinction. With all due respect, Mr. Speaker, this is not a point of order, government.
I'm sorry, I'm going with our security agencies, but it's CSIS that called for the security clearances of these scientists to be revoked. This is not anything other than this government's failure to do its due diligence and protect Canadians from real threats of viruses that could wipe out an entire population. So will the Prime Minister tell Canadians why these scientists, who represent the highest risk to our national security, were given clearance to work in these labs? And what's he covering up? Why is he protecting them now?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the two scientists in question are no longer employed by the Public Health Agency of Canada, and of course we cannot disclose additional information nor comment further for privacy reasons and confidentiality. We will continue to ensure that we are both welcoming of the international scientific community in advancing the knowledge that will help us understand not just this pandemic, but how to build a better future for everyone in Canada and around the world, while at the same time working with CSIS and our security agencies to keep Canadians safe, while at the same time standing strongly against intolerance.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
And the Prime Minister told us that they're partnering with universities. These are the same universities that are partnering with Huawei that this Prime Minister, unlike all of the other Five Eyes nations, have banned. What is with this Prime Minister's admiration for the Chinese Communist Party, for their basic dictatorship, for their interest in our intellectual property? What is this Prime Minister trying to hide? Is it his connections with the Chinese Communist Party that has him again protecting these individuals?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We will continue to ensure that our institutions and our networks are kept safe and secure. An examination of 5G technologies and review of security and economic considerations is ongoing. We will carefully weigh these matters with our allies and partners, and we will make the best decisions for Canadians. We will move forward and at the same time stand against anti-Asian racism, stand up for diversity, and stand against intolerance.
Never mind the fact that communism isn't a race, and the Communist Party doesn't speak for the whole, race. We are diversity here. We agree there.
The Prime Minister's Research Security Working Group is not working, Mr. Speaker. Right. International experts have warned about China's developing capacity in bioweapons. They've also warned that any academic working in China is available to the state for military and defense purposes. This would include the scientists that his government approved to work at our high-security lab in Winnipeg. Will the Prime Minister commit today to increasing security at the National Microbiology Lab? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
American foreign interference pose real threats to Canadian research security, intellectual property, and business interests. This is a threat that our government has always taken seriously. In March, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry requested the development of specific rules that integrate national security considerations into research partnerships. Public Safety and CSIS are leading outreach to universities to help them keep research safe. Canadian universities and research organizations must remain vigilant to protect their IP, and we haven't hesitated to support them.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Always takes our security seriously, Mr. Speaker, from a Prime Minister caught in cash for access fundraisers with Chinese leaders in his first year as Prime Minister. The Prime Minister who reversed a decision to block a sale of ONET Communications, a firm that had contracts with the Pentagon and our closest allies. A Prime Minister that refuses to take a stand on Huawei, the only Five Eyes country that has not acted. And how many days have the two Michaels been in prison, Mr. Speaker? So I'll ask the Prime Minister again, will he commit, after this serious breach of our security at the National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg, will he commit to ending all partnerships with the Chinese National Military Medical Institute?
Honourable Prime Minister.
We have always taken this threat seriously. Public safety officials have met with more than 34 universities to help them keep their research safe. In 2020, CSIS engaged more than 225 different organizations, including universities, to ensure they were aware of foreign threats. The Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry in March requested the development of specific guidelines that incorporate national security into the evaluation of any research partnerships.
Well, this is the most hard-hitting question period I have seen in a long time. I hope the Conservatives keep up the fire, you know. And Trudeau answering back, not like everyone wants to hear, but answering these questions, pretty much fielding them all.
For Lethbridge.
Quote, our government supports an open internet where Canadians have the power to communicate freely and have access to the legal content of their choice. Seems like a good idea. That's a quote from the Liberal Justice Minister in 2017. But sadly, Bill C-10 does the exact opposite. It actually takes choice away from Canadians by dictating the content that they should and should not view online. It's sneaky, it's controlling, and it's wrong. So why is the Prime Minister insisting on regulating the internet?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Justice Canada's analysis confirms that Bill C-10 remains consistent with the Charter's guarantee of freedom of expression. C-10 aims to level the playing field between creators and web giants. It requires big, powerful foreign streamers to provide information on their revenues in Canada, financially contribute to Canadian stories and music, and make it easier for individuals to discover our culture. The bill explicitly says that obligations apply to web giants only, not Canadian users. Web giants have gone unregulated for far too long. Our government has chosen action over reaction.
The member for Lethbridge.
The Prime Minister insists on misleading the House and thereby the Canadian public. In 2017, the Prime Minister, however, was committed to defending this concept of net neutrality, which of course is the principle that internet users should have equal access to all sites, all content, and all applications without blocking or giving preference. Now he wants to put an internet czar in place in order to promote some creators and demo others. It's wrong. With Bill C-10, the Prime Minister is turning Canada into the most digitally regressive democracy in the world. Why?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, in 2017, the Conservatives demonstrated they didn't understand net neutrality, and they certainly don't understand it now. Bill C-10 seeks to promote Canadian music, storytelling, and creative works. It does not affect the work and activities of internet service providers in Canada. It has no impact on Canada's commitment to net neutrality.
The member for Lethbridge.
Wow, I thought the Prime Minister was going to mansplain net neutrality there for a moment, but it looks like he doesn't even understand the definition because he couldn't define it. The Prime Minister tries to mislead Canadians by saying that Bill C-10 is against web giants and it's about promoting Canadian artists and content. So Let's have some fun. Do a little quiz. There's a movie. It's called Ultimate Gretzky. It's about none other than Canadian-born Wayne Gretzky, who is often described as the greatest hockey player ever. It's also filmed largely in Canada. So through the chair to the Prime Minister, is this movie Canadian enough to pass as Canadian content?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
For many years, Canada has put in place measures to support and promote Canadian content, to create the kind of film and production industry that led to the creation of many of the great content, like what the honourable member is talking about. The fact is, we made choices to highlight and privilege Canadian content over foreign content. That is exactly what we're going to continue to do and give the tools to the CRTC to do in an increasingly digital world, to make sure we continue to find and tell and share stories of Canadians, great Canadians like Wayne Gretzky.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Well, that was embarrassing. A whole lot of ums and ahs and a few stumbles, and yet isn't able to define Canadian content. Likes to talk about it a lot, though. Let's talk a little bit more about Canadian creators, shall we? Brian Wiley from Calgary, an expert gamer who has over 1 million followers on Twitch. Or how about Montrealer Kiana Gomez, who created a whole business using TikTok? Sadly, these self-made creators just aren't Canadian enough in order to be considered artists by the Liberals. Bill C-10 will punish them, demote them, prevent them from being further successful. Why is the Prime Minister hell-bent on punishing these ingenuitive creators?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, what we have demonstrated from the very beginning of our time in office in 2015 is that we are there to support Canadian content, Canadian creators right across the country, particularly after a Conservative government that did nothing but attack culture, attack content creators, and limit the cultural industries in this country. We will continue to stand up for producers and content creators of great Canadian content right across the country. This Bill C-10 is about giving the CRTC the tools to do just that in a world where people don't only get their Canadian content from CBC or CTV or on the radio. We need to make sure we continue to support Canadian content. That's exactly what we're going to do. No surprise the Conservatives don't get it.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Well, that was embarrassing. A whole lot of ums and ahs and a few stumbles, and yet isn't able to define Canadian content.
Of the great content, like what the honourable member is talking about.
Winnipeg North is rising on a point of order.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's actually to the same point of order. I, over the last number of months, as many of my colleagues, tune in virtually and understand what our obligations are. If we want to get the attention of the chair, we put up our hand, and then we wait till we are ultimately recognized. During question period, on several occasions, there are members, in this particular case, it was the member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, that intentionally undoes the mute button in order to interject. It's one thing to do things by accident, but it's the same member on several occasions, and I think there needs to be a consequence.
I'm going to have to interrupt because it sounds like we're getting into debate again, and the point of order is not interjecting in the chamber, and we'll deal with that one a little bit at a time. And I want to remind all the members, it is on the individual member's honor that we're in here following the rules, and I want to encourage everyone
It seems as though in raising the point, which has been raised before by the member opposite and by the parliamentary secretary to the government house leader, that it is in effect itself an attempt at a commentary or debate or to name and shame particular members. In this case, the member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan. However, while that member was responding to that point, the member for Milton, the member for Winnipeg North, also took their microphones off mute in the same way that the member for Kingston and the Islands said was inappropriate, and that the parliamentary secretary to the government house leader and the member for Kingston and the Islands were seeking for the chair to sanction the member for doing just that. And so I defer always to the judgment of the chair occupant, and just find that perhaps, if there is to be a ruling in the opinion of the chair, that perhaps we just ask members to appeal to their honor and the regular traditions and customs of this place, and not look to tattletale every time they hear a member engage in what has been a traditional practice in this place for many, many years.
Wow, Rito is beating Kingston.
The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands is rising on that.
The intent of my rising to indicate this point of order, Mr. Speaker, was because of the fact that this particular member has done it repeatedly on a number of occasions. He routinely does this where he interjects. And it's not affecting the ability for those in the House to listen to the debate. What it is it's affecting those who are online, because suddenly the entire feed and the sound is eliminated and they're unable to hear anything. So the point here, Mr. Speaker, is those who are doing this repeatedly over and over, and I would encourage you to somehow enforce some kind of rule that would prevent this from continuing to happen.
Now we have two more people rising on points of order, and then we'll get on with the business of the day. L'honorable député d'Argenté,
the honourable member
led to the creation of many of the great content, like what the honourable member is talking about.
On the same point of order, the member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, is doing this, repeatedly and deliberately. He will take his mic off mute and intervene. So there's a distinction between doing this once and doing it systematically. Here, he's not listening to this, contravened the rules.
Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, is rising on a point of order.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I was, with all due respect, interrupted when I was initially trying to make some comments on this matter. Many members have now intervened with various aspersions about myself, and I have been very interested in setting the record straight about some matters of the context, and I'll be in your hands for whether or not I can share that context. But as I was saying before, Canadians of Asian origin are speaking about the impact on their lives of foreign state-backed interference. And this is part of the racism being faced by Asian Canadians. That is pressure from foreign governments, in particular the governments of China, to deny them with the freedom.
I'm going to interrupt the honourable member there. I mean, normally when we get up on a point of order, if I can have the attention of the chamber, please. Normally when we get up on a point of order, it's because a point of order, the process was broken. And if we're not staying within those parameters, it becomes debate. Now, I'm going to ask the honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, to go on. And remember that it sounds like he's debating something, and I'd like to know what the point of order that was disrespected was. I'll let him continue.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I will try to jump to it simply in this sense, that fighting racism, which is something that I know we all should wish to do, requires us to understand that Canadians are individuals, not extensions of foreign governments, and it's always important to make a distinction. And that is why what the Prime Minister said in question period today was itself deeply racist, because he was failing to make the necessary distinction.
With all due respect, Mr. Speaker, this is not a point of order.
Government.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt, but this is becoming a debate. It's not about the process itself. I'm going to have to cut the honourable member off.
Led to the creation of many of the great content, like what the honourable member is talking about.
Don't forget to like, dislike, subscribe, and comment. Safe Space Cafe. And always, have a good day. For the record, we here all Canadians are welcome, even non-Canadians, everyone.